flying shirtless in a helicopter? Could that be indecent exposure? You were just talking about I needed to maybe even my tan out.
Well,
you're accusing me of going to the tanning bed. You say that's not what happened. The helicopter is like a giant tanning. It's just a glass bubble. This time of year, I'm going to look all tan and fit.
well, somehow this has turned into the Officer Don Beauty salon.
I just thought I would bring it up before you tagged me. So, anyway.
Well, you do have a tan, and of course you've also been known to use various products.
But you know what? Here's what happened there. When I first started doing the little TV hits,
Hits meaning spots.
Yeah, TV stuff. Yeah, you have to wear. It's not makeup for a guy. It's more of a. It's a cover-up kind of thing because of the glare and stuff.
Did you call it a base?
And then I forgot to take it off because right after I did that, I wound up in a meeting with Ray Larson and all the prosecutors, and Ray's like, "This is a very important meeting too." And like right after it started, he just stops for a second and says, "Wait a second, are you wearing makeup?" So that's what happened. You can't catch me. But it wasn't makeup; it was cover-up. I had it's a TV thing.
It's makeup. So you still do the traffic for Channel 27, and is that? It's called. What do you call it?
Oh, they call it live drive traffic, but they're wide shots, so I don't need makeup for that. I'm going to come in too close.
Distant? You mean distant?
Yeah, that's right. Listen, these are broadcast terms. I mean,
It's showbiz.
I don't want to confuse you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Let's get to the business at hand here.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about Chris Russell.
Detective Chris Russell?
Yeah. He's he was recognized. Anytime they get a chance to do that, they do. And so what's happening is in my opinion, they're creating some sort of trying to create a gulf between the public and the police. And I saw something last night on the news where some guy says, some preacher over this thing, wherever it happened, where the pool thing, I don't know where that was, but wherever that happened, is Texas. And so what happened is that this guy says the terrorist attack is not going to be ISIS, it's going to be USIS going after racist police. Now that's a little bit scary because when you go, for example, you go up and stop a car and it's got these tinted windows, you can't see in it. So what would your thought process be in this day and time if you were still a police officer?
Well, tinted windows have been around for a long time. That's that's something that you have to deal with. But your thought process, look, you're always as a police officer vulnerable. You're not a soldier. You're policing citizens, and you're always behind the game. You have to be because you just don't get. You can't just get people out at gunpoint for no reason. All that. Nobody wants to stay like that. So police officers take chances every time they stop someone. Is my point. I mean, we used to do exercises to where they would show how difficult it was walking up to a car. If somebody decides they want to shoot you, they're going to get the first shot. And it makes you realize how vulnerable you are as a cop. And that said, police they're only going to police to the level that the community lets them do that. I mean, because they talk about authority and power. A police officer's quote unquote authority comes from the community's policing. They set the pace for what that officer can and can't do. And right now, police officers are feeling that they're better off to back off. It's not that they want to, but they're just feeling that. That's the vibe that they're getting in a lot of these communities. And that's not police officers trying to punish the community. They're just doing what they're told by the leaders to do. And therefore we're seeing crime go up significantly in places like Baltimore. I guarantee you crime's up in Ferguson. I guarantee you crime's up in New York. And all these places that we're seeing the police officers attacked by the local politicians and a constant barrage by the media, and then a very few people in the community that are made to look like they're the majority. Those areas are, man, they're savaged right now with crime. It's, you know, it's really bad.
Well, I've been following a writer who named Heather MacDonald, who has been writing about the broken windows policing. And what does that mean?
That's Mayor Giuliani. I guess it was in the 90s that he started that. In New York, the crime rate in New York was awful. You couldn't go to Times Square. The murder rate was crazy. Giuliani instituted a program that's based on it's a community policing type of thing, but it's with a stick. And it boils down to this: if you start with code violations, in other words, broken windows,
minor violations of the law,
and dilapidated. How do you say the word?
Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Dilapidated. Just say it again.
Dilapidated areas of town. You know, the theory is that criminals don't like operating in areas that they don't feel comfortable. So if you take that away, you put police in the area that they're trying to operate. If you clean the place up, and that tends to make them not comfortable. They're going to move on to someplace else, and that's what he did, and that's where the stop and frisk came from.
Stop, question, and frisk.
Yeah.
See, the media called it the stop and frisk, which has a little bit more of a you stop.
Hey, come here, I'm going to frisk you.
Yeah. Well, there's more to it than that, but the media grabbed it and turned it into stop and frisk, which sounds a little ominous. And if you realize that stop people who appear to be up to no good, and then you ask them if you can frisk them, which is what happens, and they say sure. And then you find guns or some sort of contraband of some sort, then you got it.
The purpose of that was to encourage police officers and the leadership in the city to let officers know that they want them to have contact with the public, and they're going to support them when they have contact with the public. And when people start complaining over stupid things, and you look at the person that's complaining, what they're doing at the time that they're complaining on the officer, that city's policy was, we're going to support our officers in trying to clean up our street. That was what happened. The officers went out and they did it.
And the crime rate dropped like a rock.
Yeah, I mean, you now you can walk Times Square and it's safe, and businesses moved in, and well, it's getting where it's not so much anymore. But during this period here, up till the past couple of years. But that's the broken window policy. Just take care of business. You know, make the community safe for the people that want to obey the law. Is what that boils down to. For the kids in the high crime community, that the parents that want to let their kids, which is a majority of them, play in the streets. The majority of the people that live in these areas that are so-called high crime are not criminals. They are basically held hostage by just a few people.
Well, I'll tell you, this most recent article by this Heather MacDonald said that she went to a neighborhood meeting with the precinct commander in New York. It was a high crime neighborhood, and the people there, majority were black, were desperate for the police to come back and do what they had been doing. Now, this is, but the mayor up there, some guy named Bill de Blasio, has really kind of made the police to be the bad guys, and he's beginning to reap the benefits of that, because police in Baltimore, for example, police think if they go and they make an arrest and there's any kind of fuss, that they're going to be indicted or they're going to be charged with something.
You know what I heard an officer say the other day is, he said, you know,
You mean here in Lexington?
he was in this area, in this area. He says he said police are starting to get the impression that when you get in a foot pursuit after someone who has just stole something, or someone who's just robbed someplace, or someone who is especially dealing drugs, and when that pursuit is over, that person challenges you, and things don't go well, the only person in that foot pursuit that has any real chance of spending any time in prison is the police officer. And if you think about it, if you're chasing a heroin dealer as a cop, does that person stand a real chance of going to prison? Absolutely not. If something goes wrong as you're trying to arrest him, suddenly you become the criminal. And the officers are realizing that, and it's hard for them, because what a cop will tell you is they understand that they may get shot and killed doing this job. They understand they may get stabbed. They understand they may get run over by a car. They know the risk of being killed, and they took that risk. But they did not sign up to go to prison or lose their house or family by getting sued when they're in good faith doing their job.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't sign up for that. And they won't do that. Who in their right mind would? And the cops they're hurting too, because they want to police. They see what's happening.
I spoke to a group called the Senior Intern Program. It's seasoned citizens that see how Lexington's government works. And I went to the crime scene of a homicide that occurred recently, and I was talking to one of the commanders, and she said, I'm getting to talk to Channel 27 tomorrow about violent crime in the central sector, and she says this is a lousy way to lead into it because the homicides occurred in the central sector. And so I said, well, how are you going to deal with it? And she says, well, I don't know, because they're probably going to try to make the police look bad. And I said, well, what you need to talk to them about is the number of people that you have arrested who have been on probation or parole or pretrial release when they commit these crimes. Because you arrest them, they're convicted, they're put back on the streets, they're rearrested, commit crimes, rearrested, and all of that sort of business. And until we decide to put these people that commit crimes in custody, especially the repeaters, then we're going to continue to have this revolving door.
And remember, the other point about the so-called nonviolent criminals is, as a police officer, I worked violent crimes for the majority of my career. And hey, I wasn't above putting a violent criminal in jail if I couldn't prove the violent crime, but they had committed other crimes that were nonviolent. Then you'd focus on that. Whatever it took, it's like, okay, we can't prove the robbery or the murder, but we can prove the burglary. Or we know this guy's a thief, so we'll take what we can get to get him off the street. And that, at least then they got a little bit of a sentence, and you had a break from their behavior. You can't do that anymore. Even if you know someone is a violent criminal, you can figure it out. Because most violent criminals, they're involved in quote-unquote nonviolent activity. Most violent criminals are dealing drugs, they're stealing, they're
opportunists.
They're doing all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And you do, it's the Al Capone kind of principle. You put him in prison for tax evasion, even though he's a mass murderer, because that's all you can do. That is off the table as a tool for law enforcement and cleaning up the community now. And that is part of the problem. We'll see you next week on In Touch.